Hey everyone. Please support what I do to help keep Greyhawk alive by subscribing to the channel. Also, please consider becoming a channel member to get early access to videos, exclusive live chats, quarterly adventure modules, and more. Thanks, and enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, it's been quite a while since I've continued my read-through of the Guide to the World of Greyhawk, so that's just what we're going to do today on Greyhawk Grognard. So when last we left my well-worn copy of the Guide to the World of Greyhawk, we were up to the Tiger Nomads, also known as the Chakyik. And it's interesting to note that in the new map of the World of Greyhawk, which is coming in the DM's guide in the next few months from Wizards of the Coast, they, in fact, don't bother to call them Tiger Nomads anymore. It's just Chakyik. So there's an interesting little thing. Ruled by the unvanquishable Tiger Lord Ilkhan Kligar of the Chakyik Hordes. The capital is Yeka. We'll get to that in a second, why nomads need a capital. 75,000 or more of them, and there's a couple resources, some furs and silvers and gems, but nothing big. They are herdsmen and hunters roaming from the Bernial forest to the foothills of the Yattles. Unfortunately, it's kind of off the map here behind me, but it's up in that northwest corner. Um, because they are Backloonish in origin. Because of their proximity to more civilized states, these nomads have established a few towns and villages, mine silver and gems, and conduct a fair amount of trade with both Ekbir and Paranland. These people are Backloonish. Most do not even speak the common tongue. Their banners bear the likenesses of a tiger, tiger tails, and so forth. The Ilkhan's robe of state is a tiger skin, reportedly from that of a saber tooth. So that's also really cool that there are saber-toothed tigers walking around. Probably very rare, but they're up there. Their main force consists of light cavalry with horn bows and lances, which you would expect from a nomad race that sort of kind of feels like Mongols or so, people like that. There is a small percentage of better produced cavalry, which is comparable to medium, more heavily armored. Infantry never accompanies a Tuman or horde on the march, except if the whole people is moving. Small garrison forces of footmen are stationed in permanent settlements such as Yeka. So this is pretty interesting because even though they're nomadic, they're these big bands of horsemen that go around and they have carts to bring along their tents and so forth. They still do have some settlements here and there for mines and for the capital and so forth and for trading posts. So they seem to be sort of semi-nomadic as a whole, although big groups of them are still going to be just nomads. They weather the next few decades pretty well. They're not really harmed by the Greyhawk Wars. In as far as 591, they're pretty much unchanged and untouched. They go out and they raid their neighbors and they fight with the wolf nomads, and that's pretty much life goes on for them. Obviously it's a good place if you're doing a barbarian character. It's a good place to have them come from. You could have a lot of character, with the tiger motif, and you could. You could, as a player character, you can do all kinds of fun stuff with that. It's an interesting place, tucked off in the corner, and not a lot goes on there, which, sometimes that's just what you need. So next up, we have Tusmit. Tusmit is another Backloonish land, also in the northwest corner of the Flyness, so it's off the edge of the map behind me. It's ruled by his exalted splendor, the Pasha of Tusmit, Jadim Oram. It's got a population of 150,000. It's got food and silver and gold and so forth. And what I love about this is the way that Tusmit is presented in the book. Let me just read this out. The state of Tusmit is maintained through the crafty playing off of one neighbor against the other, Ekbir against Zaif against the Paynims against Ket, and so forth. By such careful diplomacy, Tusmit maintains her rich holdings south of the Tuflik River and avoids costly warfare of an open nature. And although there are skirmishes and raids across the border and so forth, but I love the idea that the Pasha is so crafty that he's playing one side off against another, and you could have all kinds of really great. If you like this sort of thing, you could have like an Arabian Nights palace intrigue thing set in Tusmit, and you could just it could be raids and kidnapping plots and ambassadors plotting against each other, and you could have all kinds of crazy fun with that. In the background of the setting as a whole. The Pasha fears absorption by Akbir, and most of the politics he engages reflects this. He's going to hire mercenaries. The soldiery of Tusmit is similar to that of Ekbir, which means, it's pretty much Backloonish, in general. There's going to be scimitars and there's going to be mounted bowmen and so forth. Later on in the wars, nothing really happens because the wars don't really touch the Backloonish lands. The Pasha is replaced by a much younger son, who and the pressure's off a little because Ket is looking eastward because they've uh, conquered some lands, in the uh, eastern part of the Flanaess. So it changes it up a little bit. But man, you could have so much fun doing a really heavy political intrigue, lots and lots of role playing. You could have thievery and stealing documents and so forth. You got all kinds of stuff. So that would really be a fun place to do a campaign, I think, if you're if you're into that kind of game. And next up, we have the three Ulek states. They're the county, the duchy, and the principality. North to south, it's actually duchy, county, principality, but that's okay. And I'm going to do these together because they are very similar in nature. These are the three states that are on the eastern border of Kaoland, so they're right here, uh, along the western edge of the Lort Mill Mountains. Um, and they are demi-human states. They are ruled or majority dwarves or gnomes and halflings and elves and that sort of thing. And that's what makes them kind of unique. There's also Selene, and but there aren't that many of these. There's high folk, I think, is another one that's primarily a demi-human state. And that gives them kind of a unique character, which I think is really cool. I'm going to take these in north to south order. So the first one is the Duchy of Ulek, and that is a realm of elves. Uh, the Ruled by his noble radiance Grenowin, the Duke of Ulek. It's got a population of 15,000 humans. There are 12,000 high and 4,000 sylvan elves, wood elves. There's also gnomes. They've got a bunch of different resources. It is the Duke himself is a high elf, so which is very interesting because given the lifespan of the of high elves, he's going to be there for a while and probably has been for a while as well. Originally, all the Ulek states were under the thrall of Kaoland, and then when Kaoland started to go crazy and become an empire and started conquering other lands, the Ulek states said, "We don't want any of this. We declare our independence." And then once things settled down, they became good allies of the kings of Kaoland, which is a nice thing. Um, and it says here, for the duchy, while they do not love the Kaoish, they do not bear them enmity, and normal relations and trade exist between the duchy and the Grand March and Kaoland. Most traffic, however, passes through the mountains to Selene and the gnomes of the Crown Hills. So they're going eastward into the elven realm of Selene and past that into the Crown Hills. The Crown Hills, of course, being where the village of Hamlet is. So just to give you an idea of how this all interconnects. Um, there are about 1,000 men and elves in the army, heavy cavalry, and so on. I'm not going to go through it. They can levy men, elves, and gnomes as needed. For the county, which is the one in the middle, that it has is the ruled by His Noble Mercy, the Count Palatine Lewin of Ulek. Um, the capital is Jernray, yes, with about 11,000 people. The population is 25,000 humans. There's 5,000 gnomes and 4,000 halflings, and there's others. The County Palatine is on good terms with its neighbors north and south, so the Duchy and the Principality. as well as the former suzerain, the kingdom of Kaoland. Since the humanoid tribes have been driven out of the Lort Mills, the land has enjoyed considerable prosperity. That's a reference to the Hateful Wars, which drove out all the orcs and hobgoblins and gnolls and so forth out of the Lort Mill Mountains, and then they spilled out into the Pomarch and conquered it, which was a very important event in the history of the Flyness, because not only did it make things a lot safer around the Lort Mill Mountains, but it also eventually leads to the conquest of the southern half of the Wild Coast by all those humanoids, who eventually band together and form the empire where none has stood. They have, let's see, cavalry is mostly human, as are the heavy infantry. Lighter infantry and missile troops are typically gnome and halfling companies. So this is a rare instance where we see halflings mentioned in a more prominent role. Usually, there's always halflings sprinkled about in places, but this is one of those places where gnomes and halflings are actually predominant, which is an interesting thing. And then finally, we've got the Principality of Ulek, which is the southernmost one, which is on the border of the Pomarch, as mentioned. His Serene Highness Prince Olenstad Cornod of Ulek, Lord of the Peaks of Haven, which is a neat title. They got 30,000 humans, but they've also got 27,000 dwarves plus gnomes and halflings. The dwarves and other demi-humans are more numerous than humans, except in the city of Gryrax, where the larger folk are about twice as common. This is mainly because they are better sailors and in charge of the Dwarven Prince's naval squadrons based at the capital. Then they talk about the military, so they got human cavalry. Most of the infantry is dwarves, and at one time the territory of the prince reached to the tip of the Pomarch, but the nobles there despised a dwarven overlord, and they ejected the mixed garrisons in which protected their holdings in the prince's name. Ulek took no reprisal against them. So the human lords in the Pomarch kicked out the prince, who was a dwarf. They didn't like that. So then what happens is the humanoids, as we just mentioned, from the Lort Mill Mountains, come into the Pomarch. And all of a sudden, these human lords are like, oh my god, what do? We kicked out the prince's forces. We can't defend ourselves against all these orcs and stuff. The Prince of Ulek, the dwarves, did try to help them, but to no avail. The prince is on very good terms with the Count of Ulek and trades with Kaoland and the Sea Princes. So we have this whole complex of demi-human, either led or predominantly populated realms. They all get along well with each other. They get along well with the other demi-humans in the region, and all seem to be on pretty good terms with Kaoland. They played a big part in the Hateful Wars, which is a very significant event and ultimately led to the destruction of the Pomarch, or conquest of the Pomarch, depending on how you look at it. And I love that little bit of a twist where they talk about how the Pomarch ended up weakening itself by getting rid of the dwarves just at a time when they needed the dwarves to protect them from the humanoids who were about to invade. So it's a neat little thing there. So I'm gonna call it there. So hope you've enjoyed that look into these few countries. We're gonna press on eventually with more of my read through. Hope you like this one. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will talk to you all later.
Thanks for watching today's video. Please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Below you'll find links to my Patreon, which helps make these videos possible. You'll also find the web store where you can buy my books, and my blog where you'll find all sorts of free downloads and other articles. Thanks, and have a great day.